All right. We are going to get started. Thank you guys so much. We'll let people as they come in, but we appreciate you all being here in such, on time, and we want to respect that. I am Wendy Singer, and I am the executive director at No Shame on You. And we just want to welcome you to today's program. I'm going to get my notes up real quick. So on behalf of our volunteers, our board of directors, our staff, volunteers, we want to welcome you to today's Feed Your Mind series program. We offer Feed Your Mind series programming once a month on different mental health topics. And today is a special one because we're partnering with our amazing partners at JCFS Chicago. And I'm going to introduce our co-speaker today and ask her just to talk about JCFS for a moment when she begins. No Shame on You is dedicated to eliminating stigma associated with mental health conditions so that people who need the help will seek it and family and friends will know how to support loved ones. And we achieve our mission through education and outreach programs and community programs and customized mental health workshops. We have an online presence of over 120,000 social media followers. So if you don't follow us, take a moment to hit follow on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We have blogs, podcasts. We distribute really amazing resources that are completely free in our resource library online. And we are responsive and inclusive and want to make sure that we are taking care of everybody. I want to introduce my co-speaker today. She is a wonderful human. Her name is Bracha Jakofsky. Her name is Bracha Jakofsky, and she's the Abuse Prevention Coordinator and Mental Health Educator at JCFS Chicago, where she educates and implements abuse prevention and mental health curriculums to the community. She previously held the role of employment specialist for JCFS Chicago for 3 years, where she helped develop and maintain employment for people with disabilities. Bracha has previously held positions at Thresholds and Alternatives, Inc., where she provided community mental health services and implemented educational programming. Bracha has a master's degree from UIC in social work and is one of the best out there. And just a little bit about me, I'm the executive director at No Shame on You. Before No Shame on You, I worked as the director of education at Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center, and prior to that spent 18 years at JCC Chicago, where I focused on summer camps, youth development, teachable moments, and mentorship. And it's an honor to be here. We both live in the Chicago area, and we have people from all over today. So thanks for joining us. And I'm going to pass it on to Bracha and just say, I'd like you to just say a word or two about, before you begin, Bracha, JCFS, and what you offer.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. I am Bracha Jakofsky, and I am from JCFS Chicago. We offer hope, healing, and support for people in the Jewish community and beyond. We have all different types of counseling supports, supports for people with disabilities, educational programming, support groups, and so much more that I can't even list here. So go ahead and check us out at jcfs.org for more info. Thank you again for being here. We're going to get started with our program. Today, we're really hoping that you will have some tools and some skills to be able to feel like you can support your loved ones, whether it's a colleague, whether it's someone you care about, a family member, no matter who it is. We know that everyone has somebody that's going through somewhat of a hard time, whether it's just a single moment in time or whether it's for a longer period. And we know that mental health is important. So thank you for taking the time to be committed to ensuring the support for mental well-being. And we know this is a hard topic, so we will be here for support, and we have additional resources that we can provide as well. Just a note, this is content for only educational purposes and not for any therapeutic recommendations. I always like to say that because I just want to make sure we all know where we're coming from here. Um, okay, let's get started. So if you can share in the chat, or you're welcome to unmute, when was the last time that there was someone in your life that made you feel really heard or really truly supported? And think back to that time. Hopefully, it's a really positive memory for you. And even if it wasn't something that was more recent, even if it happened a while ago, what is it that they did that stood out for you? So while we're waiting for people to share in the chat, I'll share one example. I remember years ago when I was pregnant with my son, I was having like a very hard time emotionally, and I had a friend that she didn't know if it was a good time to call me or check in on me, and so the best way that she knew how, she sent me a gift. I don't even remember really what was in it, but I do remember that it made me feel seen and made me feel heard, and I still think about that, and that feeling of warmth that I have still stays with me today. And that friend is really still in my life, so that's great too. Um,
I, I have one bracha that I'll share. But if anyone else wants to share, please just unmute when I'm done and we'll take one or two more. But I am a workhorse and I work a lot. And I also am an anxious person. There's no shame. And I was a camp director for 18 years. You work intense hours and a million different things going on. And I um, was working at a local JCC and a coworker. I still remember her. I'm still friendly with her, but I'll never forget this. She came up and she saw me, and I was a bit scattered and overwhelmed, and I was dealing with some difficult situations. Don't remember what they were, but she's like, "Where are you going to eat lunch? Like, did you eat?" I'm like, "I forgot my lunch." Da, 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 da. And I just was on to the next thing. And within an hour later, this coworker brought me lunch. She got me lunch, and it was just so thoughtful, and I was so touched. This wasn't like a best friend of mine. It was just an acquaintance at work. And she's like, I could just tell you needed some love. And she picked up my vibe. She picked up what I was throwing down, if you will, bracha. So, and it felt good. It felt really good.
yeah. And if anyone else wants to share, we'll give another minute. But I will say our role isn't always that lovely, and we don't always have the opportunity to do that. But I know that from the experiences that we've all had, I hope that we want to be able to connect with somebody and be able to support someone in that way that helps them still remember that interaction, even if it's years later. And I know that we can all make that positive interaction if we are truly dedicated to doing so. So today we're really going to spend some time talking about some techniques for engaging with people, especially when we notice and we're concerned and we're not really sure where to go or where to start. And also to think about how we can offer some practical support if it feels appropriate, and also to remember what your role is, depending on the context and the situation with the relationship, and to remember that there is other supports out there. And so just as a reminder, also, we are only talking here more or less about mental health challenges, not specifically crises. And it could be anything from an everyday challenge to something that is a little more challenging for somebody that they're going through. Wendy, I'm going to pull on you and have you just call this out, because I think it's going to be boring for me to just be the only one talking
Of
here.
course, I am here. So we picked this quote because we felt it tied it well into this presentation. The quote is, people who need help sometimes look a lot like people who do not need help. What are your thoughts about this quote? We're going to pause. We're going to wait. We're going to wait a few seconds and see if someone wants to type it in or um, unmute.
Any thoughts? Everyone's really shy today.
That's okay.
Okay. Well,
Here we got one. When a loved
okay.
one was in crisis, I found help for myself and a loved one. Yeah, I think that's excellent. And we talk about that here. We're going to talk a little bit more about taking care of yourself because it is really tough for, people who you love or care about or even are just acquaintances to see them struggle, and you got to find your own support.
Absolutely.
And sometimes, we don't know. Another comment is it's a good reminder that we actually don't know what's going on for people. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot under the surface there. And it doesn't mean that we can save every single person, but I think it's important to remember that there's a mental health continuum, and sometimes people could be struggling with something and looking completely fine, and there's people that are struggling, and don't look fine. But it's not really a matter of how people look, but more or less like what could we do to support them, uh, and to also think about when we should be a little more concerned, right? So if we see somebody and there's a marked change, especially when it's causing distress and impacting their daily living, regardless if they have an official mental health diagnosis or not, if we feel like we're worried about someone in that kind of way, right? We don't have to wait until the person is in crisis or really suffering to step in. And that's where we want to think about how you can use these skills on a everyday, regular type of struggles that everybody goes through. And sometimes,
Bracha, I have to share this comment that came in because I
yeah,
think it is meaningful. If people aren't reading it, I just want to make sure. Cami put in to the first point. She said, I hug my friends, male and female, much more often than my husband does. One time years ago, I asked him how he felt about my hugging others beside him, and he said, when you hug others, I feel closer to them too. I just thought that was beautiful. But the underlying piece that we're going to talk about through this is everyone is different. Everyone has different love languages and ways that they want communication, and everybody shows when they're struggling with a mental health challenge differently. For me, I'm completely readable. I will get a hive on my face. I have a look. People know. My coworkers, my people know. But other people, you can't tell. All right, go on. I apologize. I had to
yeah.
share that.
No, thank you so much. I'm glad that you were able to share that. And thank you to the participant who shared that. Thank you. That was lovely. Yeah, but as Wendy said, just be mindful. You may not notice these signs or these changes, and that's totally okay too. But when we think about someone in distress, right, it's most often that we're going to respond in three different ways, either with sympathy, right? So it has this pity, othering, poor you. I know you're going through something, but you're kind of grateful it's not you. The empathy piece is kind of feeling for the other person. I'm with you. And the compassion, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, takes it a little step further. And there's when it's appropriate, kind of takes that empathy and turns it into action. So we're going to take a moment to watch this short clip, which I think really depicts the difference between the sympathy and empathy. Some of you may have seen it before. It's our famous from Brene Brown. Just take a moment to watch that. Hopefully it will work. And if it's not, I
Oh,
don't know why it is not turning on.
I'm going to get it. Don't you
Okay,
worry.
Wendy.
I'm going to find it and we're going
Yeah,
to take care of it.
I'm not sure why it's not turning on. But the technical issues are what we could expect. Thank you for your
Here we
patience,
go. I
everybody.
got it. So if you could
Okay,
unshare
I'm gonna stop
and I,
sharing. I'll let you do that.
okay, hang on. Here we go. Share sound. I always got to remember that. And here we go.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, Not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here. And you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no. You want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Thoughts about that? I'm going to share my screen again.
Oh, excuse me. I got to get rid of that. There we go.
Share my screen. Anyone want to share what came up for them in this? Anything in particular? Nothing. Okay. Well, Wendy,
Yes.
one of the things that I thought was so great about this video was that I think people can understand what it feels like and what the difference feels like when somebody is really truly acting like that bear and sitting down beside them. And that feeling of kind of looking down and kind of, well, at least, right? That feeling is not something that we want to experience on our own. And I think that helps us think about ways in which we could approach different situations. So when you think about compassion, compassion really allows us to take that action if it is an appropriate time to do so. And if somebody says that they really could use some of that kind of support, more on the practical end of things. So we're going to share a scenario and kind of see what you guys think about what this might look like in practice. Because sometimes it's hard to know exactly how to respond and what to do. Does anyone want to read the scenario for us? We're putting people on the spot here today.
I'll do it. I'll do it. Let's let people relax. They're eating their lunches. No worries. Sarah has noticed a concerning change in her close friend Michael, who she's known for several years through their local community theater group, the Drama House. Previously, Michael was known for his really strong personality. He was always ready with a clever quip, loved organizing social gatherings for the group, and frequently volunteered at to direct the productions. He was well liked in their social circle, often hosting script readings at his home and organizing fundraising events for the organization, bringing people together with his natural warmth and enthusiasm. However, over the past few months, Michael's behavior has shifted noticeably. He now often declines invitations with the group, avoiding social gathering with friends he used to meet with weekly. After theater meetings, his once act at theater meetings, his once active participation diminished. He sits quietly during discussions, and his usual creative input is now minimal. Sarah noticed that Michael has been stepping back from leadership roles and community projects, positions he previously cherished. Concerned by these gradual changes over the last several weeks, this is not, just a moment in time. This has been over the last month or two. Sarah decides to reach out to Michael directly. And, we're curious if people are comfortable, what your natural response might be to a friend in this situation. Feel free to unmute or put it in the chat and we'll give you a moment.
Also, what do you think's going on in this, situation? If anyone wants to share that.
Yeah, let's start with that. What do you think's going on with Michael?
This is Cammie. It's either two thoughts came to my mind about what might be going on. One is either that sounds just like me when a depression sets in, or possibly something in his life has happened, a big negative event with his family or his work or something. Those are the two things that come up to me.
Yeah. I think, you bring up all 3 points are possible. And truthfully, we don't really know what's going on, right? We just don't. We're not mind readers. But something is up. So then the next question is, how might somebody respond to somebody who this is their friend? What might they do?
Hi, I'm Sarah. If I were in this situation, I would probably bring it up to Michael and say something like, I've noticed that you've been quieter lately and not enjoying things as much as you used to, and kind of just ask if like I could check in or be of a resource or just see how they're doing to get started.
I think that's great. And it's sometimes hard to start that conversation because it'd be kind of awkward because Sarah's like, well, we're just friends, but I am noticing something. And it's been a little while since he's engaged in his regular way. And I still want him to know that I care, but maybe it's not my place, right? And it's a hard balance to kind of figure out here. So let's think about before we start a conversation, right? Before we even get to that point, what kind of mindset should Sarah maybe have before she approaches things? So starting with intention, right? What is her focus? What is her intention here for this conversation to take place? Well, she wants to come and find out what's happening. She doesn't want to intrude, right? She wants to show that she's supporting her friend or loved one, colleague, whoever, fill in the blank, right? She has that intention there. Now, I don't know what Michael's intention is, what he would be bringing to the table and what he hopes to get out of the conversation, but it's good to think about that too. The next piece is rapport, right? So if Sarah didn't have the greatest rapport with Michael, she might think about how she can build that rapport or make the conversation feel a little more comfortable so she's not coming from thin air and just like asking about his well-being. If it doesn't feel like it's her place, she might feel a little bit less comfortable approaching the conversation. The next piece is openness. So it would be helpful if Sarah came into the conversation with a kind of an open mind, like less judgment is always great, right? So instead of her just assuming, I think this is what's going on, I think this is what's happening, he must need therapy, he must need this, or this must be what's going on, allowing him to share, this is what my experience has been. And then when she approaches a conversation, she needs to be ready to listen. Listen as in truly listen, truly be attentive, not bringing her own agenda, not saying, oh yeah, well, I totally get it. I've had depression too, and you're going to be fine, right? If she's jumping in and already going to bring her own stuff to the table, it's not going to be as an effective conversation, and she's not going to be able to have that mindset for that compassionate response or empathetic response, either one, which would feel appropriate. So starting with that, that would be the foundation that we'd want to start off with. Now, switching gears to the actual conversation. It could be so hard to even know what to start with and what to say. But let's think of some ideas of things that may already be saying, but are we really getting the right response that we want? For example, right? We have the generic.
Let's start. Can I jump in, Bracha?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's remember when we're having any of these conversations that it's really important that it's not just about the words that we're sharing. It's also about our body language, the way we're saying our words. So going back to your previous slide, your intention, are you fully focused, keeping, not reading your phone when you ask the question, not speaking in a demeaning way, but really with kindness and the intention of trying to be helpful. And all of these things before we begin is going to vary based on context, your relationship, and all of those different things, whether it's a close friend or not so close friend, a colleague, a child, a parent, all of those things. So I just want to put that out there as we go through this.
Yes. Thank you for the reminder. Yeah,
Of
because
course.
you're going to see there's going to be some things, and you can disagree with some of what we put here. The reason that we're thinking about ways to actually have this conversation, the actual dialogue could look so different. And some people might say, well, this is actually really helpful, even though it's generic, hey, how are you, might be an easy way to break the ice. But for some people, hey, how are you doesn't elicit much of a response. So traditionally, if I would ask you, hey, how are you? How's it going? What's been happening? All right.
Everything's fine.
Yeah, you're fine.
I'm
Okay,
fine.
great. I'm
Fine.
so glad I asked. Maybe I even asked because I just want to get it off my chest and say, like, I checked in on you. I did my due diligence. Okay, you said you're fine. You're fine, right? Okay, moving on. But what are we trying to convey to the person? Now, it could be that, hey, how are you? You can say it in a really compassionate way, and the person actually responds with more of than a generic, hey, I'm fine. However, it would be a good idea to think about, I'm concerned about you, what's going on, what's on your mind. That might be, it might elicit a little more response. Look at the next one, blaming or minimizing. So if Sarah were to say to Michael, hey, why haven't you been around anymore? You must just not care about theater in our group. Like, you're avoiding me. Why are you avoiding me? And that just puts the person on defensive. It's not going to do well for their kind of relationship. And honestly, I don't think Michael's going to want to say much else. He's just like, well, you figured it out. Okay, fine. Like, no problem. I don't think I need to engage with you much longer.
Or
So
I'm so exhausted. I'm so mentally exhausted with whatever's going on. I don't have time for this.
yeah,
This is about this person, not me.
right.
Yeah.
So switching to what would be better to probably say is, I noticed you haven't joined us for X activity, or you haven't joined us for theater or whatever it is. I miss our conversations. I miss you. I'm worried about you. Is there something I could do? How can I support you? Right? Again, coming across a little bit differently. How about privacy intrusion? Come on, like, Michael, I need to know what's going on. Now, it could be that for some people, that's okay. For some people, they're very private. And if they haven't shared already, especially if this has been happening for months, it might not be helpful for Sarah to say, like, hey, just can you tell me what's going on? I need to know what's going on. It can be a little more demanding and not feel so comfortable. But maybe it's better for her to respond with, whenever you're ready to talk, I just want to let you know I'm here. I respect you. I respect your pace. No pressure. Takes the pressure off of the person as well, and not having this need to respond right away, especially in the moment.
And in regards to privacy, a good rule of thumb, which many people know, but just a good reminder is when you're having this conversation, be conscious of who's around you, for privacy. It's more of a one-on-one than a group conversation, clearly.
Absolutely. And invalidating assumption. You aren't depressed, are you? So even if Sarah thinks that Michael might be depressed or whatever she's thinking, again, it's not really helpful for her to come in with assumptions. And that kind of judgment is not going to be helpful because I'm pretty sure he's not going to be like, well, yeah, of course I'm depressed. He might not even know what's going on. He might not even realize, but that kind of reflection is probably not going to be helpful. So it might be, I've noticed, I'm concerned because I've seen your mood, I've seen a change, right? You might, if this feels appropriate, to reflect what you're seeing. And I really want to understand what's going on for you and how you're really feeling. Is there something I could do to help? Right. And again, these are just some suggestions. Invalidating a positivity. So look, hey, Michael, look, whatever's going on, it's going to be fine. You'll get out of it. You'll figure it out. It's all going to be good, right? How many times do we want to reassure that person that we love and we care about? It's going to be fine. And even if we're thinking it, it's probably not helpful to say that to somebody. They didn't even have a chance to speak up and share where they're coming from, what's happening for them. And assuming that it's all going to be fine is not necessarily going to help them pull through. So your feelings are valid, whatever you want to share, whatever that entails, whatever that's going on for you, I'm here to support you. And it doesn't have to all be hunky-dory and amazing. Framing with assumptions. Why are you so upset all the time? Again, putting words in their mouth and not letting them actually share what's happening for them. I'm worried. I'm wondering what's going on for you. What's been challenging? Let's hear from your perspective instead of me just coming in and sharing what I think is going on. Forcing solutions. I think most of us are not coming with this perspective, but I think you need therapy, right? Like it's so easy to say, like, we think we know exactly what this person needs. And so it's like, hey, look, like you need therapy. Like I can't help you. This is beyond your help. You're seriously not functioning. Or maybe in the context of the conversation, it could be, I found professional help to be really valuable for me. Like, I don't know if this is something you're open to, but I would be happy to help you and connect you to find resources for yourself. Again, if appropriate. Overstepping, like great news. I've already booked that appointment for you, and this is somebody that you can talk to. Here's the name. Your appointment's on Tuesday at 10 a.m. So instead of going straight to like, let me solve this, let me figure out exactly what I could do, you might want to ask the person what might be helpful for you right now. And I am here to assist in whatever way feels right for you. So moving from that, Wendy, I might
I'll play the
have a
video,
problem with the
but
video. Okay.
before
I'm gonna
we,
stop sharing.
I'm
just gonna assume it's not gonna work.
I got it
Do
queued
that.
up.
Okay.
But just any thoughts or disagreements or, any thoughts on those questions before I play that video? As I queue it up, feel free to unmute. All right, so I'm gonna play this video.
It's just, there's all this pressure,
Can you hear it or no?
And sometimes
hear
it
it.
feels like
Can't
it's
see it.
right up on me.
Can't hear?
And
No, we can hear
I
it.
can just feel it,
Okay.
like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
See, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Come on, if you would just...
Don't.
Try to see things my way. Do I have...
So while I'm keying mine up, what are people's thoughts here? Ah, I don't know what's happening today with my tech stuff. Can everyone see my screen? I don't even know. Wendy, what do you see?
Right now I'm seeing your presenter piece.
Yeah, that's not right. Okay,
Um,
there we go. I'm gonna reopen it. I don't know why it's being all weird. Okay.
any thoughts on that video? For me, it's painful. And it's painful to watch because when I first watched, I think it's a hilarious video because it puts it out there so blatantly. But for me, it is a painful thing in my life when someone I love has a struggle. I want to fix it immediately. I'm a fixer. So this, when my initial reaction to it was painful. And we got a comment that it illustrates sometimes we can see things more objectively from the outside.
Absolutely. It's true, but it doesn't necessarily mean that even if we could see the problem and the person might even be aware that there's the problem, but they not be ready for you to address the problem. Or maybe just yanking that nail out of her head would have been disastrous. Maybe she needs medical intervention right now, for that to take place. So again, it's suspending our belief in what we think the other person needs is very hard. But ultimately, you saw the shift in the conversation because as soon as she said, hey, this is actually what I need, and he shifted to actually listening to her, the conversation went differently.
It gave her some relief.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
what we want is not necessarily what somebody else is looking for. So now we're going to talk about how listening can help us learn how to respond, which is so important. We have something at No Shame on You that we do in all kinds of trainings that we call H Cube. That's our fun name for it. Supporting someone who's struggling is asking the question, do you want to be helped, hugged, or heard? And you don't have to use those words, use any word that you want that might be similar, but it takes away the assumptions. And I always joke, what would my teenage years be like if, my mentors and, the adults I look to, would just listen rather than go right into the advice. And I use helped, hugged, heard in all facets of my life, with my kids, with my spouse, with my coworkers, because everyone is looking for something different. So, do you want to be hugged is a great question to ask. Hugged is physical touch if it is appropriate. Work settings sometimes it isn't, so we adjust a little bit, but the action of giving hugs and physical touch does activate the chemical inside of you, oxytocin, which shows in research that it decreases stress and can make people feel better. Not everyone is a hugger. Cami, you chatted in the beginning that you're a hugger and your husband isn't a hugger. So there may be other ways to do this type of piece. It could be a fist bump, a pat on the back. It could be just sitting near somebody, if it's a coworker at lunchtime saying, hey, can we sit together at lunch? Or I have a great thing that I do. I have a twin sister who we're very close with, but she lives in Boston. And sometimes when we're stressed, one time she did this and then we continued it because I loved it. She was stressed out and she said, can we just stay on FaceTime and work, co-work together, pretend we're co-working? And my phone was on the right and hers was there. We weren't talking, but I saw her face. And it was just being in each other's space that helped us de-escalate a little bit. So I just wanted to share that idea because it works sometimes, but things work for different people. That is the point. You could also ask, do you just want me to listen? Do you just want to be heard? This validates people, it shows empathy, and sometimes that is all you need. I have the perfect example of this when my 12-year-old came home from school, seventh grader. She's a kid and I'm an adult, but it works with any age. She ran in here, she interrupted me. I'm like, what's wrong? She's like, she was freaking out about something. And I said, do you want a hug or do you want me to give you some advice or do you want me to just listen? My anxiety was ratcheting up because I wanted to fix it immediately. And she's like, I just want to be heard. I just want you to listen. So she dumped on me for about maybe 90 seconds, and then she was gone. And her mood changed, when I came out, a little bit later, and that was it. It was off her chest and she moved forward. So being heard, is a really important thing. And I love that it can work. And so it's very hard for me, but I ask, and that's what she needs. And when I give her advice, she gets ratcheted up. But some people do you want to be helped? And that's giving practical support and advice. So that could be that, there are times where I'm overwhelmed and somebody might say, can I help you? And I'll say, yeah, do you mind getting a head start on this task? Can you pick up these groceries for me? Do you think you can help do a carpool? There's sometimes when that helps. And we'll talk a little bit more in the scenarios on what we can do. But I wanted to share if you learn anything in this session, HQ, do you want to be helped, hugged, or heard? And also think about it with yourself. What works for you? So when you're struggling, remember people are not mind readers. So you might want to say to the person who you're connecting with, I just want a hug. Just give me a hug. I just want to be heard. Or can you help me and pick up my eggs? So all good things.
Right.
Next
Just
slide.
like in the video, as soon as she was like, no, just listen to me for a minute. And it happens, Sometimes it's really hard. My husband is like, okay, let me do. And I'm like, don't fix it. Just sit down and listen for a minute. I need to just ramble on and on for a few minutes. And so, and it's helpful when you actually can express that. Not everyone's always in that frame of mind to be able to know what they need. And that's why it's somewhat helpful to know the person, but also even if you're not sure, offering to do something specifically for them could be such a load off of their mental plate. Even just saying like, hey, is it okay if I help you with X or Y? Do you want me to help you write that grocery list? Do you want me to come with you to that appointment? Do you want me to call that therapist with you, whatever it looks like? So shifting into our scenario, we're going to go back to that. We're going to have two different endings for it. So let's play this out. So Sarah is like, okay, I'm going to have this conversation with Michael. And she goes, Michael, I've been thinking about you lately. I've noticed you seem less like yourself these days, more withdrawn from the theater group and our usual activities. I miss your energy and wanted to check in. Is everything okay? Michael, I appreciate you asking, Sarah. Honestly, I've been feeling overwhelmed lately, but I haven't really talked with anyone about it. Sarah, thank you for sharing that with me. It's completely normal to go through difficult periods, and I want you to know I'm here to listen without judgment. Would you like to grab coffee sometimes, just the two of us, or we could take a walk, whatever feels most comfortable for you? Michael, that would actually be really nice. I've been isolating myself lately, and I know that's probably not helping. Sarah, I'm glad we can talk about this. There's no pressure to jump back into everything at once, but I want you to know you're valued and missed. And if you're interested, we could explore some resources or professional help too, whatever you think would be most helpful. So after this conversation and this interaction, how do you think both of them feel? Did Sarah do this right? Did she do it wrong? What are some thoughts here?
We'll give you a couple seconds. Yeah, go for it.
I think maybe they both feel relieved. Sarah feels better that she did share her concern, and I think Michael feels some relief to finally get it out and not be holding it to himself anymore.
Yeah. And notice here, she didn't just like say, okay, let's have this conversation now, because maybe the conversation timing wouldn't have been good for him, but she was like, let's schedule something, and we can make it work. As I'm assuming also she might be out in a public setting and whatever, and it might not be a good time for them to have this full conversation here, but she at least expressed some concern. What do you think, how do you think Michael might feel after this conversation? Where they say like, okay, they're talk this out now. Michael was able to share a little bit more. How do you think he feels about like, off the offer for resources or professional help? Do you think that was an appropriate time to offer that? Or what if Michael like blows them off? They're setting up a coffee date and then he blows them off. Should she continue to reach out, or at what point should she say anything? Just something to think about, right?
I think he knows, just the positive that, I just want to point out that someone cares about him. And that has value in itself when someone, in case he is indeed struggling. Again, we don't know exactly what's going on.
Yeah, and I don't know if we need to know necessarily in this specific moment. We just need to just show up and be there first to be willing to listen to it and know then how to respond. So let's pretend that this scenario went a completely different way. And so Sarah, the beginning's still the same, but Michael, I've been thinking about you lately. I've noticed you seem less like yourself these days, more withdrawn from theater group, our usual activities. I miss your energy and wanted to check in. Is everything okay? Michael, I'm fine, Sarah. Everyone gets busy sometimes. I don't think it's a big deal. Sarah, I understand. I just want to know that if there's anything you want to talk about, I'm here to listen. No pressure at all, but I care about you and want to be supportive if you need it. Michael, I appreciate the concern, but really, I'm just dealing with normal life stuff. I don't need anyone worrying about me. Sarah, I respect that, Michael. Just know my door is always open if you ever want to talk or grab coffee. You're important to me as a friend, and that won't change. So how do you think both of them are feeling after that interaction, especially given the fact that like that interaction didn't probably go as well as Sarah had hoped, potentially, right? But what is she supposed to do now? Do you think she has some kind of feeling of frustration or resentment, like he just brushed her off? Does that matter?
My natural inclination would be it would increase I would get up more worried maybe and stressed about it. That is my natural inclination.
If somebody knows that, someone's going to probably just brush them off, is it even worth reaching out? And I think this was still a really positive interaction, meaning she was able to still express, I care about you. And he might have just responded in that way because he was trying to defend himself. And maybe he was just not ready to talk. The timing, didn't work out. But she said, my door is always open, and that could change. That could plant those seeds, right? And, he might be feeling more relieved after this interaction, believe it or not. What do we think Sarah's responding with sympathy, empathy, or compassion? Thinking about that.
I think she is definitely empathetic, and if compassion means empathy plus action, she is open to compassion. And she's taking action by starting the conversation. So this is an act of compassion, and she's leaving the door open. And I just want to echo what you said, Bracha. It's all about planting seeds, and we have to remind ourselves that patience is critical, when people are having a hard time. And just because you mention it, it doesn't mean they're not thinking about it and that they're not going to come back to you. And I love what you said, planting seeds. It's all about planting seeds. And we have to remember that.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, what should you do if they say they don't want help, right? First of all, it's really important to think about the fact that you could still reach out at another point in time. Sometimes just giving a general, hey, I'm here to support you isn't very helpful. Somebody needs a little bit more specific support, like sending a present, sending a text, making them a meal, whatever it is. Sometimes, as we said before, timing is just not right. Sometimes you're not the right person. Sometimes it's just not, or that's not the kind of relationship that you have. And sometimes the person's just not ready or doesn't want that kind of help that you kind of envision. And, at the end of the day, you just kind of have to focus on your own feelings. But it's hard. Sometimes there are things where you're going to feel like you want to step in and it's not the right thing. However, we would be remiss to not mention that if there are times where a person has desire to hurt themselves or other people, or there's a concern for somebody's safety, again, though that would be the only time that we would want to step in a crisis situation. So just reminding people that there is the 988 and 911 available. 988 is the National Suicide Hotline, and it connects to resources in the area. Somebody can call for themselves or they can call on behalf of others. It's for emotional support. And 911 is really more for medical emergencies. They do have usually support for somebody who is gonna
Immediate.
potentially need that medical intervention.
And 988, for if anyone doesn't know, it was created 2 years ago. And the idea is that research has shown that when folks call 911, sometimes when someone is not a mental health professional, but rather, a police officer, or a medic or a paramedic, that is sometimes it can escalate the situation. So the entire nation has adopted 988, where you can call, text, or chat anytime. And I also want to mention that you don't need to use it if it is a crisis, only if there is a crisis. You could call them to just consult and say, what do you think? What are some resources in my area that I could give them? So one time at No Shame on You, somebody reached out to me who didn't live in the United States, lived in a small island off the coast of Africa, believe it or not, and was struggling with their mental health. I called 988. I said, I'm looking for international resources that someone could call, text, and chat, and they took care of it for me, So I think it's a pretty amazing service, and it is going to get better and better, and they're tied to local mental health agencies in whatever community you're calling from.
Thank you for that, Wendy.
Yeah.
And just to leave us with the reminder that your role in any of these kind of interactions is not to hold someone else's pain, even if it feels like you should, right? You're not taking on someone else's burden. We can lighten the load. We can help them put it down. We can maybe alleviate the burden to an extent, but we're not responsible to hold it for them. So again, it's really important to remember to think about what is your relationship with that person? What is the dynamics that you have there, right? Have they received your help in the past? Is there a better person to help, right? And also, what is your motivation? Are you in that situation where you want to be the hero and fix it? Feels good to help and step in. Or do you just want that person to get the help? And then it doesn't matter who it is that's supporting that person, as long as they're getting the help that they need. Remember, you may need to offer support more than once and in multiple ways, but that true compassionate and empathetic response means that you're respecting their choices, even though you might not be rescuing them, and you might have to put up your own boundaries. And so if you're finding that you are struggling to watch your loved one or your colleague or your friend, whatever it is, watching them suffer, make sure to also get your own help and support, because it is very hard to go through that. So We just want to leave you today with hoping that you have taken away some techniques for that authentic connection and that compassionate response, and to remember how to support someone in a way that you can reach out. And even though it might not work all the time, offering the HQ, hugged, helped, or heard is an extremely helpful tool. And remember that your role is not to save the person, not to fix the situation, but even just that compassionate response can help and start the conversation. Before you leave today, we always find it helpful to have any kind of feedback. So if you have a moment, Wendy is going to put, if she hasn't already, please take a moment to fill out the survey. It is very valuable for us to be able to continue creating relevant and important programming for our communities. And thank you for being here today and taking the time out of your day. And
we'll hang on just for a moment if anyone does have any questions. We'll hang out in the Zoom lobby, as I call it here. And if anyone has a question, you can ask it. Thank you, Bracha. Thank you, JCFS, for partnering with us on this. You can see our contact information here. If you need anything, check it out. Our next Feed Your Mind series is in February. I believe it's on the 21st, a Friday, and it's going to be on Eating Disorders 101. What are eating disorders? Should I be concerned for my friend or family member or myself? And tips and tools to help support it. Thanks, everyone.
thank
Have
you.
a
I just
great
wanted to
time.
add one more thing, Wendy. Don't
Yes.
forget we have Mental Health Shabbat. And so
Yes.
there's a ton of resources on there that we have collaborated with JCFS, No Shame on You, Chicago Board of Rabbis, and we encourage synagogue communities and spaces to utilize those supports and to find what maybe works for them and how to celebrate and encourage mental health across the community. So be sure to check that out at jcfs.org. You can find it under Mental Health Shabbat. And we have some really awesome resources. And thank you, No Shame on You, for providing some amazing things on there.
Thank you, Bracha.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye. We're just